45 minutes. As a matter of fact, we have 40 because Sammy, he stole 5 of my minutes. That bastard. We'll see if we'll catch up. So this session here is about cloud attach your on-prem config manager environment. And I would love for this to be a debate. Obviously, I can only demonstrate so much. So I guess some of you might have some questions about, what is the strategy? When exactly is SCCM going to die and stuff like that? And don't be shy and just, it's a small room, so let's have a debate and discussion. My name is Kent. I'm a principal consultant from CT Global, work out of Copenhagen, but spend a lot of my time elsewhere. I do look forward to tonight though, because I'll be home. One of the things that I want to talk about is kind of the messaging and the reason why I said the thing about SCCM is going to die, because I'm pretty sure that some of you have heard that. And I take it that most of you are using SCCM, otherwise you wouldn't be at this session. I've heard this, from I think for a couple of years now, and I don't know who actually said it, but for the last year and a half, they have been trying really hard at Microsoft to say, okay, it was a mistake. Let's come out with another marketing message. So they came up with this bridge here and say, okay, so if you're this old person, still living in an on-prem world and you want to get over here to Nirvana, you just cross the bridge. That was just another stupid mistake by their marketing department. So now they quickly realized that the whole bridge story doesn't work because the bridge is broken. So the message we hear from them now, and that we have heard from them, I would say with the last quarter or so, is figure out what makes the best for you. So what is the best solution for you right now, and then combine it. And what they mean is, obviously there are lots of very good reasons and benefits of using the cloud. I mean, just analytics for once, that makes perfectly good sense. Crunching all the data that they're crunching, trying to do that on-prem, that would take you weeks, and you wouldn't even have the data because you would only have your own data. And when we talk analytics here, data are extremely powerful when you can start comparing your data with others, right? Because that's like, maybe the number 3 or 4 question we get as a consultant when we go out to a customer. You want coffee, and you go like, yeah, sure. And then what, how are others doing this? I mean, it always comes up, right? Are we better? Are we worse than the others? And we always say, well, the others are, much, much worse than you. You're doing really well. Obviously, at one point we are lying, but anyhow. But that's one of the many powers of using the cloud instead of using your on-prem environment. But that's not the same as you have to, move everything to the cloud. Just figure out where it makes the most sense. So this, I'm pretty sure those of you attending at Ignite, either on-site or remote, when you tune into some of the client sessions, you are going to see and hear this message over and over again. So the Microsoft Cloud, it's not a matter of, switch everything from ConfigMgr over to Intune, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that you spend, 16 weeks migrating all of your apps to another platform, and then you don't gain anything, right? So if you have a ton of apps, and you have SCCM, keep them there. But figure out what makes good sense for you. Compliance, conditional access, that would be a good use case. Don't use SCCM for that. Cloud attach, and then use the power of Azure for that. Having said that, maybe when you are doing conditional access, I'll switch back and forth here, just in the interest of time. But maybe when we are setting up our compliance policies and setting up conditional access in here, and can I see this? I just want to go, oh, my mouse went away. Hello. So my mouse died on me. That's weird, it's only 8 years old. So when I am creating a compliance policy, let's say I'm doing that for Windows 10, one of the things I might want to do is, I might want to integrate Azure in here with ConfigMgr. Compliance policies is all about, I will only, if you don't, if you're not compliant with what I'm setting up here, Windows 10 version and so on and so forth, I won't, grant you access to our data. But one of the things that we do not have in here, but we have in SCCM is this neat little thing. So if I go back into my SCCM and I find my compliance settings here, the thing is this one here doesn't bend the same way as I do here. So if I create a compliance policy here, one of the things I love about this one, just select an OS. Are these two features. In order for you to be compliant, in order for you to gain access to our data, corp data, I want you to be up to date, patching-wise. You can't do that in Azure. And by the way, the required apps that we do have, it might only be, let's say, 5 security apps. I want you to have those installed. Otherwise, again, I won't, grant you any data. And this is the kind of the story that I'm trying to tell my customers. Don't go into a religious debate about should I be using, one or the other. We had those debates when we talked about Word and WordPerfect, Lotus Notes, and Excel back in the days. And that's, it might be a fun discussion, but it's a stupid discussion. Figure out what works the best in the scenario you are in. Make sense? I keep losing the mouse here. There you are. Okay. Another really good use case is remote wipe devices. So we just had an election in Denmark about a month ago. So we elect 179 new politicians for parliament. Obviously, they're not all brand new. A lot of familiar faces in there. But there was a new person. So she came in, got a laptop, an iPad, and an iPhone. And she called us the day after. I kind of lost my laptop. And what they have there is they have a co-managed environment. So she forgot her laptop on the train. They have a co-managed environment, meaning that when we do have a co-managed environment, we have Windows 10 managed by SCCM and by Intune at the same time. Then one of the things we can do in here is, if I just go and find my own device, and I'm not going to demo this because this is my own device. But I can go ahead and do a wipe. See, can you do a wipe from SCCM? Nope, you can't do a wipe when you have SCCM. Obviously, you can create a script that will do all sorts of things, but if you're not internet connected, then you can't get to the device. So we remotely wiped her device. The good thing was that we were in Denmark, so 3 days later, she actually got her laptop back because it wasn't stolen. She just forgot it in the train, so someone delivered it back. At that time, obviously, she had to walk, the walk of shame down to IT, and that was good because there was strawberry cake that day. But that's just another example. So finding the use cases, there are a lot of those use cases. Now, if you're still in the beginning of this journey, then up here there's like kind of a roadmap to what I would be doing. Your SCCM environment, get it updated, see if you can get current and stay current. I know we have 3 releases a year, and it can be hard to upgrade your infrastructure, especially if you have a big infrastructure and you have third-party applications that that needs to be tested first. But at least try to stay within a version or 2 versions, because a lot of the cloud components will be upgraded. And 1902 and 1906 are really good examples of that. In here we have integration for desktop analytics that I will be showing you in just a few seconds. Once you have that, cloud attach your Windows 10 clients. I'll, get the whole hybrid Azure AD join going. I can show you how we can enroll our clients fairly easy in Intune, our existing clients. Enable conditional access. And that's a tricky one because if you're too eager, then all of a sudden you have created something and everybody's shut out of your network. So, make sure you plan for this, but have it in your mind. Conditional access, compliance policies, that should be one of the first things that you want to set up. And I just showed you how you can integrate SCCM with the Intune compliance policies there. Defender ATP, you'll hear a lot about that coming up at Ignite. And then after that, we will go and figure out, okay, so what workloads does it make sense to have in the cloud versus what workloads does it make sense to have on-prem? And that's where when we are talking about co-management. So co-management means that I can have, my compliance policies, my resource policies taken care of by Intune. Stuff like, deploying a Wi-Fi profile, VPN, and so on and so forth. And then I can have my packages, my task sequences, my third-party updates. Let's use SCCM for that because we have made a huge investment and it's working. So it's not, a big bang. It's not all or nothing. Simply just figuring out the workloads. And some workloads, it makes really good sense. Others, it doesn't make that good of sense. So, and I'll be showing you. This is just a slide I decided to add in. I'm not going to read all of this, but if you look, really the only thing I want to highlight in here is that if you do cloud attach, SCCM plus Intune, you get it all. Where if you do a standalone Intune traditional OS deployment, that would make Johan very sad, and me too. And probably also your own business, because we will need traditional OS deployment for many years to come. And again, all the other stuff, BitLocker management, hardware, software inventory, yeah, you definitely have it, but it's not the same story. So those of you who are familiar with SCCM and inventory management, you can get super duper rich inventory. You can get your boot up time. You can get your, Outlook add-in load up time and all of that stuff. In Intune, we cannot get that yet. So that's, they might have, a check mark for inventory, but it's definitely not the same. So cloud attached, and we have all the check marks. Now, desktop analytics. I don't know how many of you have been playing around with desktop analytics. It's the successor to Windows Upgrade Analytics. So maybe you have been playing around with that. This is so much more. It's going to be so much more than just Upgrade Analytics. And I would say those of you who have been doing Windows 10 upgrades, one of the biggest pains is actually figuring out, can I deploy the image to that device? How about that device? How about that hardware combined with that BIOS, combined with those applications? Will it work? Will it fail? That's the biggest pain. It's not crafting the task sequence, and it's not the fact that it takes 32 minutes or 43 minutes. That's not a problem. It's the fact that we start something and then it fails. And then we have to go back and fix it, start it again, and then it fails. And at all of those failed attempts, we annoy the end user. So we get, bad reputation. We can't figure out, we don't know what we're doing. Windows 10 is a failure and all of that good stuff. So desktop analytics, as it is right now, it's a tool that I use to figure out what should be my real pilot group. And my real pilot group, when I'm doing a 1903 or whatever, is not my friends. So it's not like, cherry picking 5 of your best friends in the IT department. because that's not a really pilot. That's not a real pilot. I was chatting with one of my buddies who is also in the tab for this, and when we talked about pilot, he was like, "Yeah, our pilot, first pilot ring is 6,500 devices." It's like, okay, that's more than most organizations here have in total, but that was his pilot. We did an assessment on 72,000 devices at that organization, fixing a lot of stuff, and only 442 after that actually turned out with you have to further investigate this. And that's all because we have so much more information in desktop analytics than just our own. We have, information coming in from all other sorts that are pinging into Microsoft. So this is data-driven pilot creation. What we mean is we analyze all the hardware. We know most of the vendors, so we know when you're creating a pilot group, we know exactly how many different make and models you have in your environment. And it's really a bad idea only to take the same make and model and then, add 50 of them, because that will only give you maybe 25% coverage. Now you need to include all of these. So desktop analytics would analyze the models, analyze the software, might even analyze the drivers, depending on your settings, and then they will say, these are the 252 users that you need to include. When you do that, you will have an 89% coverage. And that's not easy if you have to do all of that manually there. So that's what they're talking about when they say data-driven pilot creation. And I'm constantly looking at time here because I want to make sure I have time to demonstrate this. So desktop analytics, it's a cloud service. It was introduced at Ignite, I believe, last year. And one of the things that they did say was, we will integrate into Intune, and then you can do, all of this stuff. So far, we haven't seen the Intune integration. So it turned out it was easier, faster for Microsoft to start integrating it into SCCM first, and then after that, integrate it into Intune. So that's what I mean with, the whole building the bridge and all of that. Forget about it. It's all a matter of using the right tools. So here, desktop analytics, this is where it all begins. So when I want to set up and configure desktop analytics, I make sure I upgrade my SCCM to 1902, get the latest hotfix, or I upgrade it to 1906, then I don't have to worry about the hotfix. Then I sign into desktop analytics, which is an M365 service. When I do that, I just go in and create the connection, establish the trust, build the trust, create the Azure application, as it's called. When I'm building that Azure application, I'm basically telling, let's just go in here. I'm basically telling the desktop analytics service, here we are. Let's just get this one here. So I'm telling the service, okay, this is my target collection. So I have a collection called all workstations. Take all the workstations I have, all the devices I have in that, enroll them into desktop analytics, right? So I have already on the other tab, I have my commercial ID. I don't feel like sharing that, but it's on the other tab. And then, by the way, also upload information about these collections, because those might be the collections, I want you to use later on in the DA service. So by doing this, it will go ahead and synchronize. And I also have this one here is kind of interesting. Because it will just give you a little insight into, so what is it exactly you can do, and that depends on your OS level, right? So anyhow, I configure this. I wait a little bit, maybe 24, maybe 48 hours, but eventually it will show up. And then I have desktop analytics up here in my M365. Now, what I want to do is I want to upgrade my Windows 10 environment. And we know we have drivers to deal with, we have applications to deal with, and obviously we also have the hardware. I plan my upgrades by creating what is called a deployment plan. I've already cheated a little bit just to get some data in here. So I have created a couple of plans, and I've said, well, my target Windows release is 1903. When I'm creating a plan, and let's just take Europe, then if I go into that, then like any other plan, I need to review my assets. So, and that would be your applications. Do you have anything that blocks? Do you have, all of that good stuff? Then I need to identify my pilot devices, and then I need to fix whatever is blocking my pilot deployment. Once I have done all of this, then it will automatically synchronize my pilot devices that passed and that are ready back to SCCM. And then it will create a collection in SCCM just sitting there waiting for a task sequence. So we are using Azure here to analyze, to crunch, and we're using the power of the task sequence engine to do what it's doing really good. So let me just, if I just get out of this, let me go to my pilot devices. Just waiting for that to load. So in this environment here, and this is the part that I would implement desktop analytics just for this. I know so much more is coming. I mean, wait for Ignite, and you'll hear hopefully some of the stuff. But just figuring out if you add just those 5 devices, the only you're just covered 17%. That's stupid of me. I mean, at least I shouldn't be surprised when a lot of my devices will fail the upgrade because I didn't test the hardware, I didn't test the apps, all of that stuff. It's not because desktop analytics didn't tell me, because DA did told me, Ken, you need to add all of these here to your pilot, right? That's the recommended list, but I only included some of them. And I will pay for that, obviously, for not listening. So this is important. Now, what it will also do is it will analyze this. So when I prepare my pilot, this is pretty boring. I'm sorry to say, but I have I can't show you that. But where we had the 72,000 devices, 442 needed attention. So in the needed attention column, you would have to fix them, and once you have fixed that, then it would just go ahead and synchronize to SCCM. So this is the deployment plan. A major part of this is to identify your pilot machines. Obviously, if you have any issues, you also need to fix those issues. And another thing we also have is the assets, and this is where you find the youngest person in the organization. And then you say, I have these 22,000 applications. You need to go through them, and then you need to figure out who is the application owner. We have to do this at one point. And that's not fun. That's why being the youngest sometimes sucks. But we have always, all of us at one point, we were the youngest one, right? So in here, I just took a single application, and then I got tired of that. So I assigned myself as the application owner. But it's very important. Even if you don't have desktop analytics, this is a crucial part of your Windows 10 servicing project. Because if you cannot identify the app owner, you don't know who to turn to. For the company that I keep referring to, it took them 4 months, but they only have to do it once. And we know it's not the last Windows 10 version being released. So, next time they have already done this and again and again. This is very much like, upgrade analytics. It was kind of the same. So this is definitely not fun, but it has to be done. Then some of the other things, and this is really, the analytics part. So we can see our upgrades. So I can, I will get an insight into how compliant am I for all of my devices, the various builds that we have in here, and so on and so forth. But I am pretty sure and convinced that this is just the beginning, because we cannot call it desktop analytics, and then the only thing we do is we use it for Windows 10 servicing. Then we need to have something more. Okay. Anyhow. If I go back to SCCM, then I said that we integrate this with SCCM all the way. So one of the things you will see is, once you have created your deployment plans, they will just replicate to SCCM. And how do we deploy an operating system? Well, we see that one. We create what we call a phased deployment. So this is just a standard SCCM object. We have had phased deployments for quite a while now. So in here, I'll just be selecting my task sequence. So you already have your Windows 10 1903 task sequence, or 1809. And then you select your first collection and your second collection. So if I look at this one here, browse for a task sequence, and then my first collection, and notice over here, I didn't create these collections. So these collections here, the one, the deployment plan folder, pilot production, was automatically created by the desktop analytics service. So I haven't done this. This is just them communicating with one another. So I would go ahead, select Europe as my, as my first collection, and then select, go back in here, production, Europe, production as my second collection. Question?
Yeah. See you're using now a task sequence for the upgrade. Can you also use the Windows feature upgrade?
So the question is, we have two different ways we can upgrade, right? We can do the Windows servicing, or we can use a task sequence. You can use any method that you want to use. However, the whole idea in here is that with the phased upgrade, when you're creating a phased deployment in SCCM, you can go in there and say, automatically move from one phase to another phase when this is true. So when you're 95% compliant, or you have upgraded 800 objects. So with the Windows 10 servicing, we don't have that quite yet. But you can use whatever deployment method you want to use. In here, they just kind of they realize that the majority is using a task sequence, so they have kind of integrated the whole task sequence story here. But you clearly, if I go into my collection here, and go into the deployment plans, however you want to upgrade them is entirely up to you. And I would say, just getting this is a huge help for me. Just identifying and fixing all of the issues that I will run into. That's a huge help, and that's regardless of how you're going to upgrade them, because we have all made mistakes in here, I guess. And again, if I just finish this, if I go into my my deployment plans again, I will get a few dashboards in here, so I can see how many ran the task sequence, how many were blocked, and so on and so forth. So I still get the data in here, but I will also get the insight in desktop analytics. And it will also tell me, that's another thing, how many successfully enrolled, and that's the thing. I go in, I select my collection, and then I say, enroll all the devices from this collection into the service, and then I pray, because, does it work, doesn't it work, so on and so forth. So if it doesn't work, then one of the things that we can do is, if I go into my temp folder here, and here. So we have this little tool called PowerShell, and in SCCM in the tools folder you will have this desktop analytics collector. When you run this, it will produce outcome that you can use to figure out, okay, so why didn't these 25 devices actually enroll successfully? Because you want all of them in there. If they are not in there, they are not participating in the pilot, in the production. Obviously, we will catch that at a later stage, but I'd much rather just figure out why didn't they enroll. And it could be a hot fix. It could be, if I go into the M365 log file, it will tell me, you're missing a license, or we couldn't communicate, or firewall block you from communicating with this site here. So this is just like we know it from SCCM. Use CM Trace or whatever log reader you prefer, and then happy reading. I would say setting this up, getting it, get some data in there and so on and so forth. That will take you about an hour, because you already have M365. You have that. Otherwise, you need to get that, obviously, right? But then it's just figuring out, so what should be your main collection, and go in and configure that. Once you have done that configuration, then you do something else, because from there on, it will take Azure up to 72 hours before you start seeing your data in here. But you will already be able to see in here, how many devices successfully enrolled. You just won't see any data in DA. So should you set this up? Absolutely. I don't see why not. Just as I said, just getting the pilot devices identified, a huge help. And this also looks nice. Every single time you can get a charge, you're good. And that will keep your manager silent for a few minutes. Okay. So I decided to spend the majority of my session on desktop analytics, because that's fairly new. It's still in preview, so I didn't expect that many of you had it implemented. The other Cloud Connect stories that I referred to in the beginning, that would be co-management. So co-management was a huge thing last year at Ignite, and then I know a lot of customers have tried it, and they were like, does it work, doesn't it work, and so on and so forth. And to me, the truth is, it definitely works, but there's always a but. When we want to do this, we want to do this for a reason, right? I did double click, but it just takes forever. We want to get the modern workplace. That's what everybody's talking about. But the truth is, the modern workplace, that's like that's not like a triangle when you're designing your project. You have your users up here. So we need to make sure that they actually understand what it is that we're trying to do. We have your technology down here, the vendors down here in the other corner, and then we need to find some sponsors in the other corner over here. This all has to work together. We have a vision, but the technology is not yet there. I've seen that so many times. I just started a project where it's a 4-year project, a modern workplace. So we know, we started by defining, what do we want in 4 years? Okay, we want this. Okay, do we have the technology there yet? No, for these, 10 pieces, the technology is not yet there, but we believe it will be there. And that's kind of the same with co-management. If I go in here and I say, okay, so I have all of these workloads that I can move around. I can take, let's say, the client app workload and then move it from ConfigMgr to Intune. What does that mean? Well, it means that when you do that, your end users will have both the company portal from Intune and Software Center from SCCM. And then you write all the mails you want to write about, okay, for this app, you open that portal, for that app, you open that portal, and if you have any questions, call services. That's just a really good example of the technology is not yet there. It might be a good idea, but we don't want to have a company portal. We don't want to have Software Center. We don't want to have, the Windows Store for Business. We want to have one entry point. Will we get one entry point? I'm pretty sure, but we don't have it today. But that shouldn't stop us from adding that into, our vision. The same with the Windows Update policies. When I move that to Intune, what I actually do in the background is I enable dual scan. So now I get my Microsoft updates from Intune, but I get all the other updates from SCCM. The end user doesn't care, because he or she doesn't know that, but you care. All of a sudden now you have to troubleshoot and maintain 2 different platforms. And again, that kind of hits you as the user, because even though we are an IT pro, we're still a user. We are a user of the platform. And that's what I mean. We need to look at all 3 aspects when we're designing this, and then we need to realize that Rome wasn't built in a day. But that's not the same as we shouldn't be doing this, because we need to have a vision. If you have never seen co-management before, we have 3 tabs in here, and I mentioned in the beginning that I can take my existing Windows 10 devices, and then I can say, please enroll in Intune. So let's say you have built your Windows 10 devices the traditional way. They're on-prem, they're joined to Active Directory. Now you have enabled a hybrid Azure AD join. By selecting automatically enrollment that I've done up there, they will just automatically enroll in Intune. So now they have 2 masters, meaning we have co-management. Right? This one down here, this is a command line that I need for my cloud-borne devices. So when you're doing autopilot, then it's definitely cloud-borne. If you want it also to be co-managed, meaning you want it to have the SCCM agent, you will just take the SCCM agent and then you will add this command line, and it will automatically be installed and enrolled in your environment. So we have both scenarios in here. And then finally, in 1906, you can go in and say, well, for my client apps, I want it to be, just this pilot collection. For I want it to be another pilot collection. Back when it was introduced, you only had 1 pilot collection, so it has to be the same. So if you want to test out some different workloads, you would have to, on all or nothing, right? Any questions or any feedback on the feature here? Have any of you been rolling it out? No? So one of the things that I would do, again, not tomorrow because tomorrow is Saturday, but when you get into the office Monday, I would look into enabling co-management. Forget about the workloads, but just enrolling into co-management will give you there you go. If I go back into devices and I find my device here and I select the device, then notice what I have down here. I now have SCCM agent health check. I bet that most of you who are using SCCM today, you are having issues or believe you are having issues with your active clients and healthy clients and so on and so forth. This here will actually check your client. So all of a sudden, I will have Intune, Windows 10 MDM, checking in on my SCCM client. I want that. And that's without enabling anything. So I get that, I get the remote actions, I can get my compliance here. That's good enough for me. And that's even without doing any work. And I would still look smart in the eyes of my manager. Hopefully. 3 more minutes. So, talked about that. The final thing I want to spend just the last 2 minutes on when we talk about Cloud Attach is the Cloud Management Gateway. That's a feature, a service that has been around for a long time now. And it serves one purpose, making sure that we can manage clients when they're on the internet. We have been able to do that in SCCM, I think, ever since SMS 2003. It was just horrible. So when I roamed, if I didn't have any traditional IBCM, placing my management point, distribution point, the boxes in DMC, then my client wouldn't be able to call back. Some of you might have been setting this up and it worked for about a week. Then it didn't work, still had it running. Tried to find a consultant, no luck, because it's really a nightmare. So Microsoft realized that they had to do something about that, and that something is what we call the Cloud Management Gateway. So the Cloud Management Gateway here is an Azure service, and it works in the way when I'm a client, if I can just get my client out here, I will try to ping my management point. Can I connect to my management point? Nope. I cannot? Okay. Then I must be on the internet. And then I will automatically just use the Cloud Management Gateway. And then I proxy everything through the Cloud Management Gateway. And out of the box, you will get, MP traffic. We can turn the Cloud Management Gateway into becoming also a cloud distribution point. So you can get your packages, you can do your Windows 10 upgrades if you really want to do it that way. And I don't think I'm lying too much if I say this will take you maybe a couple of hours to set up and configure and test, obviously in a test environment. You need to make sure that the outbound port there, 443, is open. And if you have more than one CMG instance, then those port numbers will change. But one CMG will easily serve 3,000-4,000 client connections. And you don't have that at the same time if you're, an average 10,000 device company. We have had this going for, as long as it has been released. Our cost internally, about 125 euros a month for the service. And then we pay for the traffic that we download. But the majority of the traffic we download is free because that's just software updates. So I can patch my clients that are on the run for about 125 euros per month. That's pretty cheap. It leaves me with 14 seconds left. So to cloud or not to cloud? That's not really the question in my mind. It's really, about figuring out, where does it make best sense for me to use the service. That's it. That's mine. I can restart it if you want to. That gives us another 45. So I do realize we started up 3 minutes later because of the other session. So if you have any questions or anything, this was kind of as deep as I could dive in just 45 minutes, but I'll be hanging around. So if you have any questions later on, please pass them on. Otherwise, thanks for attending.